What's up, guys? Today we're doing the full cut test and review of the Tactile Maverick, a knife made in Dallas, Texas, USA. Let's get started. So, Tactile is running their new Magnacut at 63 to 64 HRC, which I think is awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. So I wanted to do a controlled cut test. So in this video, we're gonna talk about the controlled cut test. We're gonna talk about how it sharpens up, how it cuts, its overall performance, and then I'm also gonna talk about the negatives that are my opinion on this knife. Now, if you don't know, we recently did a shop tour at the Tactile facility in Dallas, Texas, and we made a how it's made video of the Tactile Maverick. If you want to see that video, I'll put a little card up in the corner. Now, while we were there, the guys at Tactile were absolutely amazing to us, 100% gents all the way around, and we really appreciate how courteous they were, how transparent and awesome they were. Now, we're not gonna let that affect how we feel about the knife or our review in any way, shape, or form, but I will say that they are a very, very awesome team. So, there are two different versions. There is the titanium in Magnacut version, and then there's this version, which is a rich light micarta, which is a very, very lightweight material. They both have the Magnacut steel at 63 to 64 HRC, and the blade has beautiful finishing work. Now, we talked about it in the shop tour, how they do this, but you can actually see the machine lines from where the blade is machined, but then it's got an overall stone wash on it that is slightly reflective and very, very well done. Very consistent, very smooth. Yeah, I like this finish very much. Now, as far as the titanium one goes, I'll talk a little bit about it here in just a little bit, but I want to mostly talk about this one because this is the one I had to test. Now, as far as this one goes, the sharpening tool and plunge grind is done really well. You can see where it starts, you can see where it ends. That gave you plenty of life to sharpen it. This one's already been sharpened a couple times, so very, very well done. Now, I did notice a couple at the shop where the plunge grinds were a little bit different, but you know, it's hard for me to talk about those because I don't have them here or to test. But the one I have in front of me is beautifully done the way the plunge grind and choil is done. Now, as far as the handle goes, it is slim and compact. I think that this knife is going to compete with the Hogue Deca and the Benchmade Bug Out. It feels, you know, like a similar style knife to those knives. So very lightweight. It is ergonomic, nice and comfortable in the hand. One thing I really appreciate about the Tactile knives, and I think everybody else does too, and this goes with their pens and their knives, their machining, what they're so well known for. It's so nice. It has a very nice texture. It looks really good. You can see how the machining lines match up from the pivot to the handle. It makes it pop, and you know, it offers a nice feeling to it where it's got a nice texture and it's nice and grippy without being too grippy. So extremely, extremely well done machining from Tactile. Now, the clip and carry. Clip works great. Nice ramp. It slides in and out of the pocket very nicely. I can do it one-handed, and you know, it's a nice deep carry. It's a comfortable carry. And you know, the knife is lightweight and very easy to carry, so you basically lose it in your pocket, you know. And the clip, as far as ergos go, I personally do not get affected by it at all. Even though it does pop up a little bit, you would think that this would be a little sharp. As far as my hands go, it's no problem at all. Now, as far as their hardware goes, it is all made in-house. This knife is nearly 100% made in-house at the Tactile shop. The very little things that are not made in-house are locally sourced, like their washers, and then their heat treatments are done locally. So that's awesome. I love to hear that. I love that it's 100% made, and I love that their machining is so good that they can even make their own hardware. And it's good quality hardware, by the way. T8s all the way around. Love to see that. It only takes one bit to take care of the job. So I'm glad that we're not seeing T6s. Alright guys, so now we're gonna do the steel test on Tactile's Magnacut at 63 to 64 HRC. We're gonna start off by sharpening it and see how it feels on the stone, see how it deburrs, you know, just all the sharpening processes, see how it goes with this steel, because this should be a great HRC from Tactile at 63 to 64 HRC. And then we'll get to some edge retention tests and some cut tests. So now that I've moved to my second stone, I can really feel the hardness of this steel. It's a little bit more difficult to really feel the hardness of the steel on a 140 grit Atoma. It's a very, very aggressive diamond plate. These new stones I'm using are Neeves resin bonded diamond stones, so they're still diamond, but the abrasives are much finer, and I can really feel how hard the steel is on this stone. The burr has come up very, very well. So I have high hopes on how it's going to remove. It feels like it's going to remove really, really well, but we will see. But so far, the burr's coming up really nice, really crispy. My grip pattern's really nice, and I'm very happy with it so far. All right, so now that we've progressed through all our stones from the 140 grit Atoma to the coarse grit Neeves, which is 100/80 micron, and then I think the other one's 165 and 120 or something like that, or 180 and 120. Now we are to our finishing stone, which is 50/40 micron. Now I say that this stone is about 600 grit. It's actually a little bit coarser than that, but because Neeves run a little bit finer than the typical grit you get from diamond plates, I would say that it's about 600 grit. So we are going to finish up on this stone, and then we are going to see how easily this burr pops off and how the edge comes out. All right, so now we are doing the burr removal. I'm doing very, very soft passes to fatigue the burr so that it pops off. And then we'll go to the strap. Ooh, yeah, it's already popped off, and that's a really good indicator that the steel is nice and hard. We got about 90% gone. I'm gonna do just a couple. These are very, very light passes. These passes are only to fatigue the burr, and it's gone. The burr's pretty much gone. So now we're gonna hit the strap. That was really nice the way that came off. I'm very, very happy with that. So the stropping is just removing any remaining steel from the burr removal and making sure my apex is nice and clean so we can test this edge now. Woo! It is very, very sticky. Alright, so I have a pile of the exact same cardboard here that came from the exact same box, all cut at 9 inches. So, let's get to cutting. Alright guys, so I sped it up 1,000 times because this is a very, very long cut test. So I did 2 separate cut tests, okay? 2 separate cut tests. Now, I wound up sharpening the knife 2 times, 2 separate times on the exact same stones to the exact same grit with the exact same angle. Now, the first test, I used a 1-inch section of the heel of the blade, a 1-inch section of the heel of the blade, and I did push cuts. So it was all push cuts, 1-inch section, taped off, and the results are much lower than the second test. And the reason why is because the first test was double-walled cardboard. It's what I had, double-walled cardboard, and it cut 409 feet. Now the next test was much more controlled. So the second test, I did a 1-inch section of push cuts through the center of the blade. So I taped off the heel and the tip and used a 1-inch section in the middle of the blade, doing push cuts through single-walled cardboard, and it was the exact same cardboard. I used all the same cardboard from the exact, I had a massive box, so I cut it all up into the exact same size pieces from the exact same cardboard so that this would be much more controlled. There was one piece that I had to use because you know, it had tape on it. There was one piece that had the stickers on it, but that's it. All the rest was super clean, and it got 759 feet. I repeat, 759 feet. That is an amazing result. Absolutely amazing. Remember, this is push cuts through a 1-inch section. Now, if you guys didn't see, I did a cut test with a Hogue Deca before they raised their HRC on the Hogue knives that got a higher number than it should have because I wasn't doing push cuts. I was doing draw cuts. Basically, I taped off a 1.5 inch section and I used the entirety of the 1.5 inch section, right? So the number wound up being a lot larger than it would have been if I would have done all push cuts. However, the number was still lower than this number. Still lower. Even though, you know, it theoretically should have been a lot more. So this number with the push cuts did better than that cut test. So I'm very happy with these results and I'm very confident in them. Like I said, I used the exact same cardboard and, you know, when I was pushing through, I was running out. Like I was to the end and I was thinking like, man, what can I do? If I wind up running out and it's still going, how am I supposed to finish this test? I can't get new cardboard because it has to be the exact same. Luckily, I had a couple little scrap pieces from the exact same box I was able to use in order to finish the test. It was holding on so strong all the way until the end. So it was like, it was just going really well, then right at the end, it went downhill quick. So 759 feet for the second test. The first test was 409 feet, but like I said, it was double-walled cardboard, right? And so it's basically 2 pieces of cardboard in each piece. 409 feet, it's not too shabby considering it's double-walled, but the second test is much more controlled. I'm much more confident in the number, and I'm very happy for this number. Like I said, this is a 1-inch section. Cardboard is super abrasive. It's super nasty, so it's not good for your edge. So for a knife to cut 759 feet with push cuts through a 1-inch section of the blade, that's amazing. That's amazing results. Now I want to shout out Cedric and Ada, Pete from Cedric and Ada's Carpal Tunnel. I gotta shout it out because it fatigues you so much doing these tests, and I can only imagine with as many tests as he's done and the type of tests he does, how gruesome it is on your hands, because my hands were ready to fall off by the end of this, especially after the first test, because the first test I was actually holding the cardboard instead of resting it on the table. Now, at the end, when it finally stopped cutting, the edge is still sharp. It's not like this is a dull edge. This, I would do two, 3, maybe 4 or 5 passes on a strop and have this thing perfect. So it's not dull, it's just starting to catch on the paper. Okay, so after all of that, let's talk about the negatives now, because I do have a couple complaints. So one thing is the action, it's not as satisfying as I'd like it to be. And in an arena where we're seeing the Kaiser drop bear and, you know, what they're doing with the crossbar lock and a bunch of other companies as well, I can name probably 5 of them right now, that have made it where the crossbar locks have really good detents. Well, this is a softer detent. Now, I know a lot of it has to do with the washer action. So maybe if it was on bearings, it would be a little bit more satisfying. It's good. It's still good, but I find that the other knives that, you know, I could name are a little bit more satisfying when it comes to the action, if that's something that is important to you. Now, I think that they could have easily just made the cutout behind the tang a little bit larger so that it was a little bit stiffer on the opening. And then if they used bearings, it would definitely be a lot more snappy and a lot more drop shutty. But on this example, they used washers, which I personally would have preferred the bearings, but a lot of people love washers, and, you know, maybe in the future they can think about doing something like that. Which I just think would be more satisfying, especially for a crossbar lock action. Now, the next negative is, at least on my example, I don't know, maybe they're doing left-hand versions, but this is only a right-hand version, and a crossbar lock is ambidextrous, so it'd probably be a good idea for them to have left-hand versions. Maybe they do. You know, at least on mine, it's only right-handed. Now, the next negative is, I'm not a fan of these scales. This Rich Light micarta, it looks just like G10 to me. I cannot tell the difference. I literally have, there's no difference to me between this and G10. It has a lot of flex, and this is something that I complained about with the Hogue Deca and with the Bug Out. I don't like that. So, because when I'm using it, it's pinching me when I squeeze. Now, remember, there's the titanium one. So, this isn't a complaint against both of them. This is just this particular one. I would 100% prefer the titanium one because, you know, like I said, this flexes, it kind of pinches me. You know, I break down a lot of cardboard and it just can be a little bit sharp in here on the edges and stuff when you're really bearing down and doing long-term cutting. Now, the benefit to this is it's super lightweight, which is going to be important to a lot of people. So, you know, if the weight is important to you, it's not to me, but if it's important to you, then, you know, this might be the better option. For me personally, I'd prefer the titanium ones, and I think that using just regular micarta probably would have been a little bit better than the Rich Light micarta. Like I said, I'm just not a fan of this stuff, but I am a fan of micarta though. I love micarta. I'm not a huge fan of Rich Light, and I'm not a huge fan of this Rich Light micarta, but it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. Like I said, they have the titanium version. Now, the next thing is mine does have a little bit of up and down play. And, you know, it's very minimal, but it definitely has it. Now, like I was saying before about some of the other companies that are using their crossbar locks now and have kind of made them even better, theirs are very solid. So I know it's possible to have crossbar locks without any play. However, it's, for me, like all my Benchmades have it. I think the only one that I don't have that with is my Benchmade Griptilian. But my other Benchmades, my Benchmade Bug Out, my 940, they all have it. So it is somewhat common with crossbar locks, and that doesn't mean that the lock is any weaker. It just means that, you know, the crossbar is not as snug as it could be behind the tang of the blade. But like I said, some of the other companies that have kind of made the crossbar lock even better than originally, they've mastered the lockup, and they've also mastered the type of tension it requires to open it, and, you know, all that good stuff. So, you know, it having up and down play is a negative to me. Now, the next thing is, and this has to do with the handle material again, this one I can flex big time. But, you know, it's just the lightweight material. Now, as far as blade play, it's very minimal, but it does have a little tiny bit. Now, in order for me to get rid of that, that means I have to sacrifice my action, which, like I said, I think bearings would have fixed that. You know, with the bearings, you can make it where it's fall shut action, but it's not, it doesn't have any play. But, like I said, I can tighten that out, but, you know, I just, then my action is sacrificed a little bit, not much. Now, I think a lot or some of my negatives would be fixed with the titanium version because most of my issues, or some of my issues, boiled down to this handle material that I'm not a big fan of. So I just want to put that out there, that I did get to try the titanium version, and a lot of the issues I have are not that way on the titanium version. Now, as far as the up and down play, now that might be consistent across the board because that's going to boil down to the tension of the Omega springs and the tang of the blade and the lock face geometry. So all in all, I wish the Omega springs were a little bit stronger and the detent wasn't so spongy. I kind of wish it was on bearings. That way the action would be a little bit more satisfying, and, you know, I can tighten my pivot down a little bit tighter without it, you know, slowing down the action. I have a little bit of up and down play, and I'm not a fan of the handle materials because they do flex a lot and they're just a little too lightweight for me. But like I said, some of these things will be worked out with the titanium version. Now, the good things and amazing things about this, they did a phenomenal job on their steel. I'm very, very happy to see that. So amazing steel. It sharpens up so good. It feels so good on the stone. It deburrs so good and so nicely, revealing, you know, such a crispy edge, which, you know, is something that is a great experience when you know how to sharpen. When you know how to put a nice edge on a steel, it's amazing when the steel is heat treated well, and, you know, you have an amazing experience sharpening it. And then the steel holds it as it should. Now, another thing is, you know, I love the style of knife it is. I love the shape. I love the ergos. You know, the overall just everything on the shape of the knife, the geometry and all that. I love it. I think it's a great size. I think it's a great worker, a great work knife. Crossbar locks are very, very strong, so it's going to be able to handle some decent abuse. The crossbar lock, people don't realize this is an incredible strong locking mechanism. Now, as far as it being made in the USA, of course, I love to see that. I love supporting a business that is in the United States. So there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.